Good afternoon, Chamber members. For those of you I haven't met yet, I'm Sabrina Binkley, head of school at Spruce Tree Montessori and Fairbanks Chamber of Commerce Chair. I'd like to take a moment, as we do each week, to thank our executive partners whose logos you saw on the screen before we began today. These businesses are truly the backbone of business in our community and a pillar of strength for the Fairbanks Chamber. Their support is not only financial. Often these businesses are providing the Chamber and our advocacy committees the knowledge and information needed to inform our advocacy process and the support of policy that makes Fairbanks and our state the best environment possible to do business. A full list of our executive partners can be found on our website. I'd like to welcome Brenna now online to help us recognize our new and renewing members. Brenna?
Thank you, Sabrina. We have two new members that we'd like to welcome today. The first being Hot Shot Sisters, located here in sunny Fairbanks, Alaska, and Blueprint, Alaska, located in Anchorage, Alaska. We'd also like to thank our renewing members, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, Warwick and Shakora, CSG, Alaska Oral and Facial Surgery Center, Family Centered Services of Alaska, Beaver Sports, the Girl Scouts, Thrive Alaska, North Star Council on Aging, Delta Western Petroleum / Inlet Petroleum, McKinley Orthopedic Sports Medicine and Spine, Hattie LLC, Walsh, Keller and Sharp, Downs, Tellerico and Schwalm Law Firm. We'd also like to welcome some new members to our 110% Club, which means that these members have gone above and beyond their membership investment to help us with our advocacy actions. And those are the Castle Megastore, Robinson and Ward PC, Presbyterian Hospitality House, Spring Hill Suites, Alaska Golden Heart Cheerleading, Myers Real Estate, Terry Olson Allstate Insurance, and the Pepsi Cola Bottling Company of Alaska. Thank you for assisting us. In today's membership minute, we're going to focus on a new feature that we've added to our weekly newsletter called The Scoop. This new feature is called Extra Scoop and is an action item where you can purchase a small advertising spot where you can put out a call to action or maybe an upcoming event or thing that you want the public to know about that normally doesn't fit into our traditional sections of our newsletter. You can find more information about this on our website, which is fairbankschamber.org. Thank you, and back to you, Sabrina.
Thanks so much, Brenna. So this has been a busy week for our Chamber committees. Today, the Government Relations Committee discussed results from the recent primary election and how they may impact our advocacy priorities for the following year. They also looked at the importance of clarifying business owners' legal right to mandate specific conduct for customers and employees in their establishments. For example, requiring face masks. Tomorrow, our Education and Workforce Development Committee will meet with Dr. Karen Gaborik from the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District and Dr. Michelle Nace from Tanana Valley Clinic about the health steps and decisions being taken by the school district this year. With many employees grappling with childcare questions this fall, we are considering how the Chamber can best engage on this issue. And finally, in case you've been wondering about the construction on Phillips Field Road, the Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee learned about the new Aurora Energy Solutions kiln, which is taking over the old Quality Meats property. We look forward to seeing their first loads of kiln-dried heating wood soon to help improve winter air quality in Fairbanks. So Marissa is out exploring Alaska this week with her family, hopefully a little late summer R&R, so I will be sharing her report today. So with that, this is the beginning of the President and CEO report on behalf of Marissa Shera. We have a special video to share from Leadership Fairbanks facilitator Jeff Welch. Let's roll it.
You know, 2020 has not gone quite the way I expected it to go. I'm not sure if you're having a similar experience, but a lot of things have gone very differently than I thought they would. Hi, I'm Jeff Welch, and I facilitate the Leadership Fairbanks program for the Greater Fairbanks Chamber of Commerce. And I want to invite you today to consider enrolling in our next session. As a coach, when I think about all the changes that have happened and all the different things that people are experiencing this year, the question that I want to ask, that I want you to wrestle with a little bit is, what are you going to do about it? Because lamenting the fact that things are different and wishing that they weren't the way they are is not going to do anybody any good. We're going to have to act. We're going to have to do something to adapt to the circumstances in which we find ourselves. And I think Leadership Fairbanks is a great tool to help you get clarity around what to do next, around how to lead through unprecedented times. Ultimately, Leadership Fairbanks is an online course that will help you become a better leader by hearing from some amazing guest speakers, by networking with other emerging leaders who are going to bring their varied perspectives to help you expand yours, and by learning tools and techniques that will help you to lead more efficiently and effectively. I've done a lot of work to ensure that you don't just get good information, you don't just get good insights, you don't just get tools, but ultimately that you're getting connection, that you are getting connection from leaders in our community and from around the world, that you're getting connection with your classmates in a deep and meaningful way that will last far beyond the limits of this online course. That ultimately you'll be carrying these connections and relationships forward far into the future. I hope you will consider going to leadershipfairbanks.com and enrolling in the next session, which begins in September. We're right around the corner from another group starting, and I would love for you to be a part of it. I would love for you to take seriously what it means to develop yourself as a leader, to position yourself as someone who can help us through unprecedented times, who helps your organization and your community deal with the unexpected. Because here we are in a time in history where leadership is more important than ever. So I hope that you will consider going to leadershipfairbanks.com and enrolling.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Enrollment forms for Leadership Fairbanks Class of 2021 are due this Friday, September 4th. You can go to fairbankschamber.org, click on Leadership Fairbanks to read all about what's on the horizon for the Class of 2021. If you or someone in your organization is a good candidate for the program, please take the time to encourage that person to enroll. We have an exciting and adapted plan for developing your leaders, and they will appreciate your support of their professional development. A new development this year is that we are happy to announce the creation of a scholarship to increase diversity and inclusion in our Leadership Fairbanks program. Interested applicants can read more about it on the Leadership Fairbanks page, and applications can also be found there as well. The deadline for scholarship applications is also this Friday, September 4th. If you have any other questions, please email Katie. Thank you so much to our Leadership Fairbanks 2020 sponsors, Shannon & Wilson, Design Alaska, Keys & Associates, GCI, Mac Federal Credit Union, ConocoPhillips Alaska, Wells Fargo Alaska, Usabelli Coal Mine, Summers Sotheby's International Realty. We are so grateful for their continued support. We would also like to give a big thank you to Good Cannabis, who is a scholarship sponsor this year. Because of them, we are able to extend this Leadership Fairbanks opportunity even further. The Fairbanks Chamber Board of Director elections opened last Friday, and they will remain open through next Wednesday, September 16 at 5 p.m. Our goal is to beat our previous best for member response rate of 42.7%. We use a third-party service called simplyvoting.com to facilitate our electronic voting. The primary representative of each chamber member in good standing will receive an email with specific voting instructions. There are 11 candidates vying for 7 open seats, and you will be able to learn a little about each one on the ballot. Your vote will help decide the future of the Fairbanks Chamber's leadership team. Please direct any questions to the Fairbanks Chamber. Our main phone line is 452-1105, rather than replying to the email that you receive. Up next is our next virtual ribbon cutting, and that is scheduled with McKinley Orthopedics, Sports Medicine, and Spine. Tune in to our Facebook Live on Wednesday, September 16th at 4:30 p.m. to meet Dr. Carey and learn about their new spine services. And you'll be able to watch our 20 questions interview with him a couple days later to get an intimate view of their space and learn all about his business and practice. You can find information about all of these things and more online at fairbankschamber.org or give our office a call anytime. Okay, now for our main presentation. We have all been hearing the word census this year. Most of us know that it's taken every 10 years, but many of us may not understand the many ways that these numbers are important and impact us on a state, community, and even individual level. We are pleased to have our panel of guests today to speak to the impacts of the census on their industries and on our greater Fairbanks community. We have Alysha Childs. She's the Complete Count Committee Coordinator out of Mayor Ward's office at the Fairbanks North Star Borough. A UAF graduate, Alysha has lived in the Fairbanks North Star Borough her whole life and loves being a member of this community. Today, she is here to discuss the importance of the upcoming census on the interior. She's a youth exchange officer with Rotary International and plays on a team with Epic Kayak Ultimate, which is a local ultimate frisbee kayaking league. I never knew we had that. That's awesome. We also have Mike Sanders with us today. He has been the Housing and Homeless Coordinator for the City of Fairbanks since March 2017. His office oversees the local AmeriCorps Vista program and the Fairbanks Housing and Homeless Coalition. Mike is a certified project management professional with a PhD in public policy administration. Next, we have Brittany Smart. She's worked for the office of the Fairbanks North Star Borough Mayor since 2016. Her position entails engagement and project management in a variety of activities as they relate to the borough, as well as economic development and military affairs. And lastly, Chad Hutchison is a longtime chamber supporter. He's an attorney and has been the State Senate Majority Counsel since 2013, although today he's here in a strictly volunteer personal capacity. Prior to working with the Senate, starting in mid-2007, he was an attorney here in Fairbanks at Cook, Schumann, and Grosclose. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We'll go ahead and begin with Alysha. The mic is yours.
Great, thank you so much. So yes, my name is Alysha, and I am here with the Interior Counts 2020 Census. The Interior Counts is a coalition of different groups in the community who felt it was really important to emphasize the importance of the census in Fairbanks. So we have City of Fairbanks, Fairbanks North Star Borough, and then a bunch of nonprofit organizations and just community partners who really care about the importance of the census and want to make sure we get a complete count this year. Our motto has been 10 questions, 10 minutes, and 10 years of impact. The census has been going since 1790, and though the questions have changed, it's still important for the federal government to get that complete count of every single resident of the United States. So most people know a bit about the census. They know that it impacts representation, it impacts funding, and it impacts a lot of different programs. And we're going to have people talking about that later. We've got Brittany, Mike, and Chad who are going to talk about some of the really important parts of the census. But right now, we've got a lot at stake. So the census is going to be finishing on September 30th of this year. And so we have 30 days to get a complete count. Can I get the next slide? Okay, so here is just a general list of programs that we get direct federal funding from due to census data. So back in 2016, state of Alaska received over $3 billion directly on census data. We get about $3,000 per Alaskan per year. And that does depend on different age brackets and things like that. But really getting even a 1% undercount can really underfund our community for the next 10 years. Can I get the next slide? So hopefully everyone here has already gotten a chance to fill out their census. It began on March 11th that you were able to fill it out. They just ask about 10 questions. They need to know who's living in the home, whether it is owned or with a mortgage or rented, telephone number so that they can follow up with people, and then the information on everyone living inside the home. And so we have been able to respond to the census since March 11th. Unfortunately, with the COVID starting mid-March as well, we had a lot of operational changes that happened because of the census. Can you get the next slide? Cool. So the way that the Fairbanks North Star Borough is normally enumerated, the majority of the borough should have received a census packet in the mail. We do have a lot of areas, though, where people would not have received their census packets and in the mail, and instead a census worker actually went to their homes to drop off those census packets. All of the yellow area on that map that you see is areas called update leave, where the actual census workers were dropping off the packets. Due to COVID this year, they ended up having to postpone the update leave operation, which was set to start the second week of March and instead happened in mid-June or July. So we saw a lower response because of that currently. We also have some areas in Alaska which are under remote Alaska. So some areas in the borough are also enumerated that way. The remote Alaska is where an actual census taker goes door to door, knocks on the household, and enumerates them at that point. That was completed back in March, and so right now we're still seeing a slightly lower response than we expected. Can I get the next slide? Okay, so some of just the different operational changes that happened because of the census is the non-response follow-up was postponed. Originally, non-response follow-up is where anyone who has not responded to their census yet has someone come knock on their door and ask the questions. Originally, that was slated to take place beginning in April, and that got postponed and started in the borough on August 11th. Originally, they had planned on postponing the census and continuing it until October 31st. Back first week of August, they announced they were not going to do that, and instead they were going to end the census on September 30th. So we have about 1 month less of time to get those full responses. A lot of our group quarter enumeration also was impacted. Group quarters is where people are living in, say, the dorms. They're not going to have census takers go and ask every single dormitory who's living there. Instead, they rely on getting that information from the university. Most of the group quarters have responded at this point, but there are still some group quarters that were impacted, especially Census Day is April 1st. So a lot of places were already in COVID shutdown at that point. And so they didn't have their normal count of people that they would. So they're trying to figure that out. Also, our homeless population, which Mike is going to talk about later, the original count was scheduled for March 31st, and it's now been postponed and will happen September 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. Can you get the next slide? Great. So where are we right now? Fairbanks North Star Borough has a current self-response rate of 51.8%. So that is how many people went online or by phone and filled out their census or mailed it in. City of Fairbanks is a little bit higher at 52.9%, and City of North Pole is at 54.8%. Overall, the state of Alaska self-response is at 52.9%. So we're about 1%. We're really within that range. The total response rate for state of Alaska is at 85.9%. And that's part of because of the non-response follow-up program that's happening right now, where the census enumerators are going door to door and getting those response rates up. We don't have that broken down by borough or by census tract like we normally do with the self-response rate, but they've said they've finished about 50% of the enumeration of non-response follow-up. So we're expecting the borough is currently sitting around between 80 and 85% as well. Can you get the next? So this is where we are right now with our self-response. You can tell some of the areas we are really struggling with is areas like the Saltshite area. So all of the orange, bright orange areas are about in the 30% range. All the blue areas are between 50 and 60% have responded. So those are areas where everyone did receive their census packets, or at least the majority of people did. There's also a lot less people who have lake houses or anything. in that area, but we do have a lot of people who have, you know, a Birch Lake house, and those people might not have put in that house when they were filling out their census. So right now we're showing that we haven't gotten a response from those areas. So they're working on them right now, but we are trying to really get a hold of those people. We sent out a mailer to every PO box in the borough, just reminding people that if they did not receive a census packet at their house, they still have the opportunity to respond. We saw a bit of an increase from that, but we do still only have a 51.8% response rate for self-response in the borough, and we're hoping to get that up soon. Can I get the next? Great. So the non-response follow-up that's happening right now is where the census takers are going, knocking on every door, visiting every household. If they're not able to get the information from a specific person, so if they go and knock on a door and no one answers, or the person says they're not willing to provide the answers, what the census takers are doing is they're getting information by proxy. And so that's where they might go and knock on their neighbor's door and say, hi, we can't get a hold of this person who's living next door to you. Can you tell us how many people are in that house and information that you have on them that's on the census form? They do get information that way, which is really great. Unfortunately, it's not always the most accurate. You might know that there's a married couple living at the house next door to you that has 2 kids maybe, but you might not know if they have a newborn. You might not know if they have someone couch surfing and staying with them who's been staying with them for a period, or even a renter staying at their house. It is really important to try and get that most accurate information. And unfortunately, we have seen a bit of a difficulty. So it's really great that we've got right now an 80 to 85% response rate, but this is where we're really going to have the struggle, is getting that last 15% response rate in the area. So can I get the next slide? Great. So one thing is Fairbanks is a pretty private area. People don't necessarily like people showing up at their house, and they don't necessarily trust people who are just knocking on their door. So we've been trying to encourage people to be to work with the census workers when they show up, to give them the answers they need. Census takers, you can identify them. They have their U.S. Department of Commerce ID badge. They show that they're federal employees. They also are entering all of your information onto a Census Bureau issued phone. So none of your information is being put onto their private phone, and it's all being put into that secure phone, which is going to a secure server. One of the things is the census takes information very serious. So due to Title 13, there is no census worker is able to share information about people that they enumerate. And then that information is protected all the way up. It doesn't get shared outside of the Census Bureau. It's not being shared with your landlord to see how many people are living in your home. And it's not being shared with law enforcement to see if there's someone with a warrant. It's not going to ICE to see if there's someone who's not a legal resident living there. And that's really important for people to know. Can I get the next? Great. So if you have not filled out your census yet at my2020census.gov and you do have a census worker coming to your door, they might be asking you some interview questions. So they need to know just the exact same information that would be on the census form that you could fill out online. And so that's just name, race, and sex. There's no questions about social security numbers, bank information, or citizenship status. One of their fears has always been that during census time, people might be going door to door to try and collect information and in a scam. So none of the actual census workers are going to be asking any question that's not on the census form. They also do have people available in 13 different languages to fill out your census. So if someone does not speak English and they do need that additional help, they are able to request to have someone come back. And the actual census form is translated online into 13 different languages. Can I get the next one? So you can go to my2020census.gov and fill out your census. It's really easy. It takes about less than 10 minutes usually. And you just click on Start Questionnaire. Even if you have not received your census packet from the Census Bureau, you are able to fill out your census just by entering your address. We're really encouraging everyone that we can to fill out their census. We have, as the Interior Accounts Committee, put out Facebook advertisements, radio ads. We've tried to be on the news about it. We've held events, but we are still struggling to get that last 15 to 20%, and we could really use help. So all of the organizations, if they could each share, try and, hey, if you could fill out your census, it's really easy at my2020census.gov. It's really important to our community. So we would really appreciate that help. Can I get the next slide? Great. So you can still fill out your census, my2020census.gov. Also, if you want to go to alaskacounts.org, they have a lot of resources that can be shared on the importance of the census, getting those out on social media, asking your employees, hey, can you guys take 5 minutes to fill out your census right now? It would be really beneficial, and it's really important for us to have that complete count. So to talk about some of the importance of getting the complete count, Brittany, would you like to go?
Sure, I can go. Thank you so much, Alysha. As Sabrina mentioned, my name is Brittany Smart, and I'm Special Assistant to Mayor Ward here at the Borough, and I work on economic development issues. So really the main takeaway we'd like the audience to hear today is that an accurate count means more than just federal funding for our community. Yes, it means that we get our fair share, but it does mean more than that. It also helps to tell the story of our community and who we are. The census is an invaluable tool for data. It's the single best source of information on demographics and growth potential of our community. First and foremost, the census is used to help determine federal funding allocations based on a per capita basis. An accurate count is essential in ensuring that we receive our fair share of federal funding in order to best support and serve our community. For some examples of federal funding that we get, there's highway funding, transportation and infrastructure, there's funding for Head Start, health insurance, which includes Medicare and children's health insurance, SNAP and WIC benefits, Pell Grants, education in schools, the National School Lunch Program, Section 8 housing, not to mention the Native Alaska supports and other lower income support that we get from that. And that's just at the federal side that these numbers directly impact. Most, but not all of the federal funding is for programs that serve these lower income families. And for those of you that don't know, about 16% of our transit budget for our max transit system comes directly from FTA, the Federal Transportation Administration, and their allocation is based on a per capita basis. The state also distributes some funding on a per capita basis, and from what I understand, the majority of those numbers are also based on the census population counts. For transportation and infrastructure through fast planning, we split a $20 million pot among communities with a population of 5,000 to 200,000 throughout Alaska, and those are for projects that are not highway, such as our local road improvements, road service areas, pardon me, etc. With the growth that Matsu is experiencing, we are anticipating to see a decrease in that funding allotment, but that's also another reason why those accurate counts are so important. Also through the state, we receive funding through the Human Services Community Matching Grant as well as community revenue sharing, although some of those have been up for discussion at the state level, but for the most part, those are also formula-based. The census also has indirect impacts on our community as the resulting data is used to drive additional investment and funding opportunities. For instance, nonprofits, community organizations, and local government leverage this information to seek additional grants to support our community. Additionally, the local and state government uses the data in order to help secure public safety as well as for emergency preparedness. And businesses use the information for investment decisions, whether they're going to be opening up a business, developing more jobs, and that kind of thing. So yes, the federal funding is an important aspect, but the data itself drives a lot of indirect investment into our community as well. So the key takeaway that we're interested in is please fill out the census, help us get our fair share, and help us tell the story of who we are as a community. Thank you.
All right, I guess it's my turn. This is Mike Sanders. I'm the Housing Homeless Coordinator for the City of Fairbanks. And just to tag on with what Brittany and Alysha mentioned, there's about 132 different federal grant programs that are out there, and that are directly given out based on the census data. That equates to about $675 billion across the country, and Alaska receives its proportional share of that. Now, particularly with the housing and homeless service grants, a lot of those are done by the by HUD, by the Housing and Urban Development, and the way they do their grants is it's based on, they have minimums, so it's based on a minimum population. So some of the grants, we're just going to get the minimum in the state of Alaska every time because we have a smaller population. But other grants are broken down by even the community. So if the community is only showing at 50,000 people, then they might not qualify for the particular grants. So one of the problems that we run into here in the interior is, even though Alaska will get a proportional share of the federal funds, sometimes those funds don't get to the other communities other than Anchorage because we're of our size. We aren't big enough to qualify for those particular grants. So that's one of the reasons it's really important to get out there and get a good, accurate count. And Alysha had mentioned that the homeless count has been pushed from March 31st to September 22nd through 25th. And that is definitely going to have an impact on our count. In March, we have a very about 50 people that are staying on encampments and folks and staying away from the shelters. But now, in September, we have a much greater number. In the summertime, in the warmer months, people tend to move away from the shelters and move into the encampments for the added freedom that they get in the encampments. That's definitely going to throw a monkey wrench into how we do the count. But we have encampment outreach folks that are ready and willing to help the census people whenever they're ready to do it. And I believe that's all I have. On to Chad.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. My focus is going to be on the connection between the census and the state legislative districts, since it's expected that we're not going to obviously pick up a federal congressional House seat based on our population. I think the thing that people should be thinking about is the interior of Alaska and what the effect is as it relates to the census and the data that's collected. So it's important to remember that in interior Alaska, we represent 6 out of the 40 seats in the state legislature in the House, and 3 out of the 20 seats in the state Senate. So that makes up about 15% of the entire state is represented by interior Alaska. The reason why that's important is because we have a focus that drives certain issues that may not be something that's focused on in other parts of the state. And the ones that come to my mind over my observations of the last 8 years is I think about military state support for military issues, whether it be military facility zones, military licensing, support for DOT projects that help build adjacent roads and bridges for military training. Mining legislation, a lot of mining legislation, the alphas, the people that are pushing it forward oftentimes come from the interior because we have a lot of small placer mines. We obviously have Fort Knox, we have Pogo and Usabelli in the interior. Proponents of UAF, obviously that comes from our interior delegation. And then another important issue that affects all of us is, and the interior is sensitive to it because we're at the end of the rail belt and we feel the cost of the electrons, is rail belt electrical utility issues. So this is why it's important to fill out the census and to make sure that the interior has adequate representation when it comes to the state legislature. the predictions that they've had thus far from the Department of Labor, and this is pre-F-35s coming into Alysha Air Force Base, but the predictions that they were allocating back last year was that the interior is likely to lose a half seat, and the southeast section of Alaska is likely to lose a half seat, and that the Mat-Su South Central area was going to gain 1 seat. Now, those are all predictions pre-F-35, so that emphasizes the importance of filling out the census and making sure that everybody's counted, including everybody that's coming in with the F-35 population, the support staff, the DoD staff, et cetera. So the way redistricting is done is that there is a redistricting board that's been appointed, and it's looking for regional diversity. Bethany Markham is from Anchorage. She's been appointed. Bud Simpson from Juneau. A leader from Fairbanks, John Binkley, from our own backyard, which is a good thing. And then Nicole Baremio of Anchorage and Melanie Banky from Nome. And what the redistricting board is going to do is take the census data and give an initial proposal after that census data is collected, and that's due within 30 days upon distribution of that data. So for historical context, in 2011, that occurred on April 14th. And the Redistricting Commission, throughout the process after that collection of the data, they'll hold hearings and make appropriate adjustments, and the final maps are due 90 days after that delivery of that census data. And the citizens of the state of Alaska are allowed to submit proposed maps. And generally what the commission is tasked with is complying with equal population requirements. And that's under our state constitution, Article 6, Section 6. So the relevant authority that they're going to be looking at, both from a constitutional perspective and from case law and judicial interpretation, is are the districts contiguous and compact? Are they relatively integrated in a social economic area? There can be consideration for local government boundaries. One Senate district has to have 2 House districts. And it should be noted that since the last redistricting, during that process, the process itself has actually been more streamlined. And so the state is always going to be looking to, in addition to the streamlined process, ensure that Alaskans' voting rights are equally protected. And they want to provide adequate assistance to ensure that minority languages also have the equal opportunity to vote once the districts are drawn. It's important to remember that the board cannot add any more seats. So there's 60 seats total, 40 in the House, 20 in the Senate. And if history is any indicator, you could probably expect a number of court cases. Certainly we had that back in 2010, 2011, where there's a back and forth about what actually is an appropriate size and scope of the district. And I think that it's probably mentally wise to prepare for that upcoming in the future. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And that's all for my presentation today. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much, Alysha, Mike, Brittany, and Chad. So now we will take questions from our community through our online chat. You can use the live chat field to send questions through, and I will go ahead and ask Janelle to present those questions. Janelle?
Okie dokie. Well, thank you for that. So the first question is just maybe an opportunity to reiterate for anyone who might have missed it in the beginning. How do people respond to the census? What's the process?
Okay, so you can go to my2020census.gov and fill out your census. We say it's 10 questions, 10 minutes, and 10 years of impact, but I was able to fill out my census for my household in less than 7 minutes. It's really quick on there. It's translated into 13 different languages. You can also call 844-330-2020. And that will also help you if you, say, have a vacation home or a second house somewhere, or even a vacant apartment that you normally would rent out, and you're not able to fill it out on the online portal for that household. If you can go on there, if you notice that census workers are coming to one of your vacant apartments or something, you can call that number, and it really only takes about 5 minutes with them talking through that.
Okay, well, I can definitely say I filled it out online and it was very fast and easy, so I can endorse that position. Another question that came in, so how does the census count active service members and their families, many of whom live on a base or on post? Are they counted with our Fairbanks numbers or elsewhere?
Okay, so they are counted under our Fairbanks numbers. Any military personnel who's living in the barracks, they are counted under group quarters enumeration. For families who are living off base, they will hopefully have gotten a census packet and be filling that out at my2020census.gov. But while they are living in Fairbanks, they are counted under the Fairbanks numbers. So Fort Wainwright and Eielson, they both matter in the borough, and they do count towards our numbers. Anyone who is overseas deployed on April 1st should have been counted by the Department of Defense to the Census Bureau directly, and they should also be counted under our Fairbanks numbers.
Okay, so someone asked if they've already filled out their census, why would a census worker still be coming by their house, or why do they have a packet left on their door when they got home?
So there's a couple of different reasons. One of the reasons is that when the Census Bureau is going through and doing their address canvassing, occasionally there will be some differences in spellings. So the way that we have an address marked at the Fairbanks North Star Borough, which we provide addresses to the Census Bureau and say this is how many residences we believe we have in the borough. And then they also use things like the utility companies. So if there is a spelling difference or a formatting difference, the Census Bureau is going to use an overabundance of caution and consider both of those addresses as separate addresses, even though they might be the exact same place. So someone might have gone in and responded and they said, okay, this is this address, but in their system, it still shows that there's another address and it does look like it's in the exact same spot, but they go and double check because they would rather overcount and then have to account for that later than miss a household because they just made that assumption. Also, if someone didn't have their census packet when they filled out their census and they went and they put in with an apartment number and they didn't realize, and the Census Bureau did not realize that it was an apartment, they might be going back there. So households that are like Suite A and Suite B, sometimes the Census Bureau will go back because they didn't have it listed as a suite. And there's just a couple of different reasons, but hopefully once you're able to explain it, they should be able to mark that off and not come back. They also might be going to different households to check on neighbors when they're happening to do that proxy count if they haven't been able to figure out the address just by knocking on those original doors.
Okay, well, and actually that's all the questions that have come in so far. So I think we'll probably turn it back over to Sabrina.
Okay, thanks so much, Janelle. And thanks again to our panel for sharing their industry perspectives on the very important impacts of the census. And to our listeners, thanks again for joining us today. As a reminder, there will not be a presentation next week following the Labor Day holiday. So I hope you all have a safe and happy long weekend, but we will hope to see you the following Tuesday, September 15th for our annual United Way Campaign 2020 kickoff. And with that, Fairbanks, let's get back to work.